Hello everybody, and welcome again to another tips, tricks, and techniques video. This is Dave from Double Edge Racing, and today we're going to be going over how to make sure that your suspension is properly free and working correctly. Today I'm going to be doing this with the rear of my truggy, but this will apply to every single vehicle. The first thing that most people don't do quite correctly is this, your sway bars. Now it is important that your sway bars are always going to work exactly the same way. They can actually have a fairly drastic influence if they stick or if they slide a little bit to one side or the other, so they won't provide the same amounts of pressure everywhere. So the best thing that you can do to start with is to make sure that you have it installed and that these here are quite tight, but not just tight to the sway bar itself, but tight to the edge. You want the very tiniest little bit of play in there, but it basically shouldn't move. If you have a lot of play in there, your sway bar is going to slide side to side, and so at some points in time it'll put more pressure on one side, more pressure on the other, and this will just make your vehicle really hard and unpredictable to drive. Now the second part of that is also the same. You can see that I've got this, it flops around nice and easily, and it always falls down into place. Well, you don't want it to be moving around a lot like this, because again, if it's rocking around, you're providing different pressures on each side. So you want to tighten these two large screws down as much as you can so everything is solidly in place. And then one screw at a time, you're going to take these little set screws and screw them in until this doesn't move. Now that it doesn't move, I'm just going to hold this in appropriate position, and I'm going to slowly unscrew it until it falls. And so now that I did that, it moves, it's nice and easy, it's free, and there isn't a lot of movement this way. Again, I'll do exactly the same thing with the other side. And that's actually still just a little bit bound up. So a tiny bit more out of it. And there we go. Now we have a nice, free, and easily moving anti-sway bar. The next portion to cover on this is going to be with arms. Now, the way that we used to do this all the time is actually the way that I've chosen to do it again with this particular build. And I'm going to be reaming out the arms. The way to do this is either with a 4mm reamer, such as this, like I'll be using, or to do it with a number 19 drill bit, which you can go in there. If you're doing that, just chuck it up, spin it slowly as you go in and out of the shaft area, and you will end up with a free moving arm. However, what a lot of people have found is that that can sometimes cause buildup inside here of different dirt. And so what they're doing now is they're cutting the arms and not doing any reaming or drilling to them. And if you look really closely on this arm, I've put down in here already a little line because I was going to cut this, and that's right here. So you can see this line coming down across and then back up. And what you want to do with that line is you want to come across from the base of this cone and just keep a nice angle going so you're all the way across your droop screw area, because you want to still have the plastic supporting that. And you come across and then back up just before this valley in here, which should be on just about all of the vehicles. By doing that, coming up anywhere on this side of the valley or even straight down to the bottom, what you're doing is removing this center part so any of the dirt that works its way in can't get stuck in the middle when you're driving. And that makes it much easier, much quicker to clean out. Typically you don't have to do the clean out. I have decided that I'm not going to do that for this build because I also intend to do some bashing with this vehicle, and I'll be doing that out in the snow and the cold, so I want to have the most rigid amount of plastic here possible. For any kind of racing situations, even with nasty crashes though, nobody has been having problems since they've been cutting these out. This may or may not end up on a future mold, so you don't have to do it. But for now, make sure that whatever you're doing, whether you're reaming it or you're cutting it, you put the droop screw in all the way first. This way, the plastic is in the same position and the same amount of give that it will have when you're running the vehicle. And if you're going to be cutting, make sure you use a plastic cutting wheel on your Dremel, and then you go slowly and a little bit by bit. If you try to go too fast, or you turn the RPMs up, or you don't go just a little bit at a time and you try to do it all at once, you'll actually end up melting the plastic around the cut, and that's going to give you a hard time and a bad problem everywhere. As far as doing the reaming, it's actually pretty simple. If you've got a 4mm reamer, the 4mm is exactly what the hinge pins are. So when you take a hinge pin and you put it in, what you're going to see is it's going to have just a little bit of bind once you get in there. And in this case, I've already done some reaming to this, but what Tekno wants is to be able to do this and have it fall all the way through. Definitely do it that way if you have run the arm or if you are doing maintenance on it and it's not brand new. However, if the arm is completely brand new, again, I'm only going to run this through once or twice. On my short course, I had to do this several times, but by running through just a couple times, this won't quite fall all the way through, but it does come all the way to the other side. And by doing this, there is still a little bit of friction in there, but very, very little. Now, I know that this is still a mostly free-moving arm, so I am not worried about that. It's not the pin spinning in my fingers, it's the arm spinning on the pin. And by making sure that I have it moving freely like this, I know that that last little bit is going to break in automatically for me after about a pack of battery. So that's where I want this arm. This arm, on the other hand, is quite sticky, and that's spinning the hinge pin in my fingers as opposed to inside the arm. So what I'm going to do is just take and run the reamer through it a few times, and when you do this, ream in both directions. You notice the reamers typically have only on two sides their cutting edges. Some of them will have more, but even when they do, you want to run it through in one direction, turn it 90 degrees and run it the other direction, and just continue to turn this as you go through, and that way everything is even all the way around when you're doing your reaming. And that now goes through nice and smoothly, and I have an arm drop without spinning the pin in my hand. So this is good enough. It is not the way that most of the team drivers would run it, but I know that this is going to break in and it'll be okay for what I'm expecting to do with it. That's about all. There is one other thing along this. Not really an issue with the new .3 vehicles, especially with the newer pill blocks that are squares, but some of the old vehicles, when you built them, you could actually get in a situation where once you put the arm and pin together, if you put the other toe block on, if you tighten everything down 100% as far as you can possibly go, you could actually end up where the arms would be a little bit squeezed and not want to move. If you end up with that happening, there's two things that you can do. One is to back off about a quarter of a turn on either of these screws or either of the screws on the back. The other thing you can do is there's a little bit of a ridge here on the arm. You can also take that off with a file or some sanding, and that will work out okay. On the .3 vehicles, however, do not do this, because depending on the angles that you have, you will actually end up with some play in there to start with, and so you aren't going to want to take any of that off, because that would just give you a lot of arm play that you don't want. Anyway, that should take care of making sure that you have a freely moving and good suspension that you can run the exact same way every time. Hope that helps. See you next time.